Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Blood hero, Vlad King found Deku first. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sky over Muzutafu was a bruised shade of violet, swollen with rain that hadn't quite decided to fall yet. The air was thick, humid, and smelled of ozone and exhaust. It was the kind of atmosphere that stuck to your skin, making the simple act of existing feel heavy. For Midoriya Izuku, existence was already heavy enough. The 14-year-old walked with his head down, counting the cracks in the pavement. 1, 2, 3, skip the weed, 4, 5. It was a ritual. If he focused on the cracks, he didn't have to look at the world around him. He didn't have to see the hero billboards that seemed to mock his empty aspirations. He didn't have to make eye contact with passers-by who might recognize him as the quirkless Deku from Aldera Junior High. His shoulder throbbed. Earlier that afternoon, Bakugo Katsuki had slammed a palm against it, just a warning shot. A burst of nitroglycerin hot enough to singe the fabric of his gakurin but not enough to leave a scar. The words, however, had burned deeper. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof of the building and hope for a quirk in your next life. Izuku gripped the strap of his yellow backpack tighter. The bag was scorched, slightly damp, and heavy with the weight of his notebooks. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. He had retrieved it from the koi pond where Bakugo had tossed it. The ink was running, the pages warped. Stupid Kaken, Izuku whispered, his voice cracking. If I really jumped, that would be instigating suicide. Think about your record. He tried to summon a feeling of indignation, of righteous anger, but all he felt was a hollow, cold numbness. The terrifying part wasn't the cruelty, it was the logic. In a world where 80% of the population possessed some supernatural ability, being part of the 20% who didn't was a genetic dead end. It was a disability. A cosmic joke. Izuku turned a corner, taking a shortcut through the industrial district to avoid the main shopping street. He didn't want to see the news screens. He didn't want to see All Might's smile today. Today, that smile would just remind him of what he could never be. The alleyway was narrow, flanked by the backs of restaurants and small machine shops. Steam vented from rusted pipes, hissing into the humid air. Dumpsters overflowed with refuse. It was the unglamorous underbelly of the city, the parts the heroes didn't patrol because there were no cameras there to capture their glory. Meow. Izuku paused. He blinked, shaking the water from his messy green hair as the first drops of rain finally began to fall. He looked toward a pile of discarded cardboard boxes near a rusted fire escape. Huddled in the corner, shivering and wet, was a kitten. It was a scrawny thing, its fur matted with grime, eyes wide and fearful. Oh, Izuku breathed. The numbness in his chest cracked, just a fraction. Hey there. You're stuck too, huh? He knelt, disregarding the grime on the asphalt. He shrugged off his backpack, fishing for the leftover bread from his lunch. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. The kitten hissed initially, but the smell of the bread won out. It crept forward, taking a tentative bite. Izuku smiled, a genuine, watery smile. See? It's okay to be scared. Well, look at this. A stray feeding a stray. The voice was rough, like gravel grinding in a cement mixer. Izuku froze. The smile vanished. He stood up slowly, turning around. Blocking the exit of the alley were three figures. They weren't wearing school uniforms. They looked older, high school dropouts, maybe, or just street punks looking for a target. The one in the center, the speaker, was lanky with a shaved head and studs in his eyebrows. He wore a leather jacket that had seen better days. I didn't know this alley was a petting zoo, the leader sneered. He took a drag from a cigarette and flicked the butt toward Izuku. It landed near his shoe, sizzling in a puddle. I was just leaving, Izuku stammered, his old habits kicking in. Assessment, 3 hostiles. No visible weapons, but likely quirk users. The leader has distended veins on his arms. Strength enhancer? The one on the left is twitching his fingers. Emitter type? Leaving? The guy on the left laughed. He was shorter, stocky, with skin that looked like gray stone. You didn't pay the toll. I don't have any money, Izuku said, his voice trembling but his feet planted. He glanced back at the kitten. The poor thing was trembling. If a fight broke out, the cat would get hurt. "We don't want money," the leader said, cracking his knuckles. His forearms suddenly bulged, the veins pulsing with a sickly green light. "We're just bored. And you look like a punching bag." Izuku took a step back, shielding the cardboard box. "Please, just let me go. I won't tell anyone." "Get him," the leader barked. The third punk, a guy with elongated, whip-like fingers, lashed out. His fingers stretched across the alley like rubber bands, aiming for Izuku's face. Izuku yelped and ducked. It was clumsy, unrefined, but he moved. The fingers slapped against the brick wall behind him with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. "Run!" Izuku yelled at the kitten, but the creature was frozen in terror. "Focus on the kid!" the leader shouted. Izuku didn't have a plan. He never had a plan for himself, only for others. He grabbed his backpack by the straps and swung it like a flail. It was heavy with notebooks, knowledge that was useless in a fistfight. The stone-skinned guy charged. Izuku swung the bag with all his might. It connected with the guy's face with a dull thud. "Ow!" The guy grunted, stumbling back. Little SHT. For a second, one glorious second, Izuku thought he might have a chance. But then reality reasserted itself. The leader lunged. He was fast. He closed the distance before Izuku could recover his balance. A fist, heavy and enhanced by whatever quirk he had, slammed into Izuku's stomach. The air left Izuku's lungs in a violent whoosh. The pain was immediate and blinding. He folded in half, dropping to his knees, retching dryly. "You got guts," the leader sneered, looking down at him. But guts don't stop a fist. He kicked Izuku in the ribs. Izuku rolled, gasping, curling into a ball to protect his vitals. Another kick caught him in the shoulder, the same shoulder Bakugo had burned. "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." "Hold him up," the leader ordered. The Whipfinger guy and the stone-skinned guy grabbed Izuku's arms, hauling him up. His feet dangled inches off the ground. Blood trickled from his nose, mixing with the rain that was now falling harder, turning the alley into a slick gray blur. "Please," Izuku wheezed. "The cat. Who cares about the damn cat?" The stone-skinned guy kicked the cardboard box. The kitten screeched and bolted, disappearing under a dumpster. "Good," Izuku whispered, his head lolling. At least the cat was safe. "Look at him," the leader laughed, pulling back a fist for a haymaker. "He's crying. You a hero fanba? I bet you are. Where's your All Might now, huh? Heroes don't come to places like this." Izuku closed his eyes. He was right. All Might saved people from collapsing buildings and villain attacks in the city center. He didn't save quirkless kids getting beaten up in back alleys. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I couldn't be anything." The leader's fist flew forward. Izuku flinched, waiting for the impact. It never came. There was a sound, a wet, thick squelch, like a boot stepping into deep mud, followed by a sharp gasp of surprise. The grip on Izuku's arms vanished. He dropped to the asphalt, his knees hitting the wet ground hard. He coughed, spitting out blood, and looked up. The scene in front of him had changed. The leader was still standing there, his fist extended, but he wasn't moving. He was frozen. A thick, crimson tendril was wrapped around his wrist, suspending his arm in midair. The tendril pulsed, liquid and solid at the same time. It was blood. The Whipfinger guy and the stone-skinned guy were similarly entangled. Ropes of hardened blood had shot out from the shadows, binding their legs and arms, pinning them against the brick walls of the alley. They struggled, but the red substance was like steel. What is this?" The leader panicked, his eyes darting around. "Who's there?" Heavy footsteps echoed from the mouth of the alley. Thud. 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 A figure emerged from the rain. He was massive, broad-shouldered and imposing, wearing a costume that looked more like riot gear than a superhero's suit. It was dark gray and deep red. A thick visor covered his eyes, and a complex apparatus of tubes ran along the back of his neck and shoulders. He didn't walk with the bounce of All Might. He walked with the predatory stalk of a wolf. "You're right," the man said. His voice was deep, commanding, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Most heroes don't come to places like this. Too much paperwork. Too little glory. He stopped 5 feet from the thugs. The rain slicked off his armor. The blood hero. Izuku whispered, his hero-fanatic brain overriding his pain. Vlad King. The leader of the thugs paled. Vlad King? The UA teacher? What the hell are you doing on a beat patrol? I was grabbing coffee, Vlad King rumbled. He raised a gauntlet hand. The blood restraining the thugs tightened. The leader yelped in pain. And then I smelled something rotting. Turns out, it was you three. We were just messing around. The stone-skinned guy cried. Messing around involves video games, Vlad King said. 3 quirk users beating on a civilian minor isn't messing around. It's assault with intent. With a flick of his wrist, the blood tendrils whipped violently. The 3 thugs were thrown together, their bodies slamming into each other with a groan-inducing crunch. Before they could recover, the blood expanded, hardening into a thick, red casing that trapped them from the neck down against the ground. They were cocooned. Stay, Vlad commanded. He tapped the side of his helmet. Central, this is Vlad King. Location 4 Alpha. 3 perps secured. Sending location data. Send a wagon. He didn't wait for a response. He turned his head, the visor gleaming in the dim light, and looked down at Izuku. Izuku tried to scramble back, intimidated by the sheer intensity of the man. This wasn't the friendly neighborhood hero. This was a man whose quirk controlled the very fluid of life. Vlad King stepped closer. He didn't offer a hand. He just stared. Can you stand? Izuku nodded shakily. He pushed himself up, his ribs screaming in protest. He swayed, his vision spotting. Why yes, sir, you're bleeding. I'm fine. Don't lie to me, kid. It insults my intelligence. Vlad King reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a small sterile wipe and a bandage. Sit. It wasn't a request. Izuku sat on a dry patch of concrete under the fire escape. Vlad King knelt in front of him. Up close, the hero was terrifyingly large. He smelled of antiseptic and iron. Head up, Vlad ordered. He began to clean the cut on Izuku's cheek. His touch was surprisingly precise, though not gentle. Why didn't you run? Izuku winced as the alcohol stung the cut. There was a cat. They were going to hurt it. Vlad paused. He glanced at the dumpster where the kitten was hiding, then back at Izuku. You took a beating for a stray animal? It didn't do anything wrong, Izuku mumbled. And you thought you could fight 3 quirk users? No, Izuku admitted, looking down at his hands. I knew I couldn't. But I couldn't just watch, Vlad grunted. He finished patching the cheek and moved to inspect Izuku's ribs. He pressed a gloved finger against Izuku's side. Izuku hissed in pain. Bruised, not broken, Vlad diagnosed. You're lucky. If that guy had known how to throw a punch properly, he would have ruptured your spleen. He stood up, towering over Izuku again. What's your quirk, kid? I saw you swing that bag. No enhancement. No emission. Were you trying to be subtle? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. This was it. The moment of truth. The moment every hero looked at him with pity and told him to go home. Izuku gripped his knees. The rain was soaking through his uniform. I don't have one. Silence. The only sound was the whimpering of the thugs in their blood cocoon, and the steady drum of rain. I'm quirkless, Izuku said, the shame burning hot in his throat. Vlad King didn't gasp. He didn't sigh. He just stared. Quirkless, he repeated flatly. I know, Izuku said quickly, desperation clawing its way out. I know I'm useless. I know I should have just run away. Everyone says I can't do anything. Shut up, Vlad said. Izuku's mouth snapped shut. Vlad crossed his arms. So, let me get this straight. You have 0 power. You have the physique of a wet noodle. You were outnumbered 3-1 by armed thugs. And you still stood your ground to protect something weaker than you. Yes, Izuku whispered. That, Vlad said, pointing a finger at him, is the stupidest thing I've heard all week. Izuku flinched. The rejection stung, familiar and sharp. However, Vlad continued, his voice dropping an octave, it is also the only reason you aren't unconscious right now. Most pros wouldn't have stepped in for a cat. They calculate risk versus reward. You didn't calculate. You acted. Izuku looked up, confused. Sir? Vlad King leaned against the brick wall, the red lights on his suit glowing in the gloom. Tell me, kid. Do you want to be a hero? The question hit Izuku like a physical blow. It was the question he had asked the doctor at age 4. The question he had wanted to ask All Might. Yes, Izuku said, his voice trembling. Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes, mixing with the rain. More than anything. But without a quirk. Can you be a hero without a quirk? Vlad finished the sentence for him. Izuku nodded. Vlad King looked at the sky. He seemed to be weighing something. The world isn't fair, kid. You know that better than anyone. If you walk into a fight with a villain who can level a city block, and you have nothing but your bare hands, you will die. That is a fact. Physics doesn't care about your dreams. Izuku's heart sank. But Vlad said, and his eyes snapped back to Izuku behind the visor. Quirks are crutches. Izuku blinked. What? Look at them, Vlad gestured to the thugs. They have power. The big one has a strength enhancer. The other two have range. But the moment I immobilized them, they panicked. They rely entirely on their quirks. Take away their power, and they are toddlers. Vlad tapped his own chest. I am the blood hero. My quirk allows me to control my blood once it leaves my body. But to use it, I have to bleed. I have to hurt myself. My power is finite. If I run out of blood, I pass out. If I lose too much, I die. Every time I fight, I am managing a resource. He stepped closer to Izuku. I teach at UA High School. I see hundreds of kids every year with flashy quirks, explosions, lasers, hardening. And you know what? Half of them wash out because they think power equals victory. They don't know how to take a hit. They don't know pain. Vlad grabbed Izuku's shoulder. His grip was firm. You took a hit. You got up. You didn't cry for your mother until after it was over. You have a high pain tolerance, or you're just incredibly stubborn. Either way, that is a resource. I don't understand, Izuku said. I'm saying, Vlad growled, that being a symbol of peace requires a godlike power. If you want to be All Might, give up now. You can't be him. Izuku looked down, but Vlad continued, if you want to be a hero who saves people? If you want to be the guy who holds the line when everyone else runs away? If you want to be the one who does the dirty work so others can stay clean? Vlad King leaned down, his face inches from Izuku's. I can't give you a quirk. But I can teach you how to make the other guy bleed. I can teach you how to break joints, how to use the environment, how to turn your weakness into a weapon. I can teach you to be a nightmare for people like them. He gestured to the thugs. Izuku's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't the sparkling validation he had dreamed of. It wasn't you can be a hero, accompanied by a bright smile. It was an offer of violence. It was a promise of pain. It was gritty, and dark, and terrifying, and it was the most beautiful thing Izuku had ever heard. You! Izuku choked out. You think I can do it? I think you're crazy, Vlad said bluntly. And crazy is a good place to start. But I warn you, kid. My class, Class 1B, we aren't the golden children. We are the underdogs. We have to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. If I train you, I will break you. I will push you until you vomit, until you pass out, until you wish you had stayed on the sidewalk. Vlad stood up to his full height. So? What's it going to be? Do you want to go home and cry about your genetics? Or do you want to learn how to fight? Izuku looked at his hands. They were scraped, bloody, and shaking. He looked at the thugs, trapped and helpless. He looked at the dumpster where the kitten was safe. A fire, long dormant and smothered by years of rejection, sparked in his chest. It wasn't the bright, yellow flame of One for All. It was a deep, dark crimson burn. The will to survive. Izuku wiped the tears and blood from his face with his sleeve. He stood up. His legs shook, but he locked his knees. He looked Vlad King in the visor. Teach me, Izuku said. His voice didn't stutter. Teach me how to fight. Vlad King stared at him for a long moment. Then, beneath the visor, a terrifyingly sharp grin spread across his face. Good answer. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police were arriving. Vlad King reached into his belt and pulled out a card. He flicked it at Izuku. It was a simple business card. Sekijiro Kinkan Dojo Gym. I do private conditioning at this address. Be there tomorrow morning. 0400 hours. If you're 1 minute late, don't bother coming. 4 in the morning? Izuku squeaked. Heroes don't sleep in, kid, Vlad said. He turned to face the approaching police lights. Go home. Clean yourself up. Put ice on those ribs. And eat something with protein. You look like a skeleton. Yes, sir. Izuku bowed deeply, wincing as his ribs protested. He clutched the card to his chest like it was a holy relic. He turned and ran out of the other end of the alley, adrenaline masking the pain in his body. Vlad King watched him go, the reins sliding off his helmet. Vlad. A police officer jogged into the alley, followed by 2 others. We got the signal. Are these the perps? Yeah, Vlad grunted, releasing the blood quirk. The red casing liquefied and retracted into the tubes on his suit, leaving the thugs groaning on the wet ground. Typical street trash. Assault and attempted robbery. Good work, the officer said, handcuffing the leader. Did the victim get away? The victim, Vlad muttered, looking at the spot where Izuku had been standing, is a work in progress. The walk home was a blur. Izuku didn't count the cracks in the sidewalk this time. He moved with a sense of urgency he hadn't felt in years. He arrived at the apartment complex, drenched and shivering, but his mind was racing. He climbed the stairs, fumbling with his keys. I'm home! He called out as he opened the door. Inko Midoriya rushed into the hallway, her face etched with worry. Izuku! You're so late! I was about to call the, oh my goodness! She stopped, her hands flying to her mouth. Izuku! Your face. Your uniform. What happened? She rushed over, fretting, her hands hovering over his bruises, afraid to touch him. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes. Did those boys bully you again? Oh, Izuku. I'm okay, Mom, Izuku said. Surprisingly, his voice was calm. He took off his shoes. I fell. And then I got caught in the rain. Fell? Inko looked at the swelling on his cheek. That doesn't look like a fall. We need to go to the hospital. Or maybe I should call the school. Mom, Izuku said, placing a hand on her arm. He looked her in the eyes. Inko paused. There was something different in her son's eyes. Usually, when he came home hurt, he was evasive, apologetic, trying to shrink into himself. Today, there was a strange intensity. A hardness. I'm really okay, Izuku said. But I need to tell you something. Inko sniffled, wiping her eyes. What is it? Izuku took a deep breath. He thought about the card in his pocket. He thought about Vlad King's warning. I will break you. I found a trainer, Izuku said. A pro hero. He offered to train me. Inko froze. Train you? For what? For Yue, Izuku said firmly. Inko's face crumbled slightly. Oh, Izuku, honey, we talked about this. Yue it's dangerous. And without a quirk. He knows I'm quirkless, Izuku cut in. He said it doesn't matter. He said he can teach me. Inko looked at him, searching for the lie, searching for the delusion. Who would say that? The blood hero, Vlad King. Inko blinked. She knew the name. He wasn't All Might, but he was a respected teacher at Yue. A Yue teacher wants to train you. Yes. Why? She whispered. Izuku thought back to the alley. Because I didn't run. Because I protected the cat. Because he thinks I have guts, Izuku said. Inko looked at her son. She saw the bruises, the blood on his collar. She saw the fragility of his body. She wanted to wrap him in a blanket and forbid him from ever leaving the house. She wanted to protect him from a world that wanted to crush him. But she also saw the light in his eyes. It wasn't the manic, desperate light of a fanboy chasing a ghost. It was the steady, burning light of someone who had been given a lifeline. If she said no now, she knew she would break him in a way the bullies never could. Okay, Inko whispered, closing her eyes. Okay. But if it gets too dangerous, if you get hurt too badly, I won't, Izuku promised. I'm going to be strong, Mom. Not like All Might. But strong enough. He walked past her to his room. He needed to shower. He needed to ice his ribs. He needed to eat every scrap of protein in the house. He entered his room, flipping on the light. The walls were plastered with All Might posters. The grinning face of the symbol of peace looked down at him from every angle. I am here! I am here! Izuku stood in the center of the room, dripping water onto the floor. He looked at the poster above his desk, the classic Silver Age debut pose. For the first time in his life, the smile didn't make him feel safe. It made him feel distant. All Might was a god. He was perfection. He was unattainable. Vlad King was blood and iron. He was reality. Izuku walked over to his desk. He took the damp, scorched notebook, Hero Analysis number 13, out of his bag. He opened it to a fresh page. The paper was crinkled and wet. He picked up a pen. He didn't write about All Might. He didn't write about wind pressure or saving smiles. He wrote, Sekijiro Ken, Vlad King. Quirk, blood control. Combat style, grappling, immobilization, resource management. Philosophy, survival. He stared at the words. I'm not going to be a symbol, Izuku whispered to the empty room. He tore a piece of tape and stuck Vlad King's business card to the corner of his computer monitor. I'm going to be a hero. He looked at the clock. It was 6 p.m. He had 10 hours until 4 a.m. Izuku Midoriya went to the kitchen. He ate 3 cans of tuna and 4 boiled eggs, ignoring his mother's confused stares. He drank a liter of milk. Then, he went to his room, set 3 alarms, and laid down on his bed. His ribs throbbed in time with his heartbeat. Thump. 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 For the first time in years, he didn't dream of flying. He dreamed of the ground, of the rain, and of standing back up. The reality check was over. The training was about to begin. Scene break. The next morning, 4 a.m. in Musudafu was a dead time. The trains weren't running yet. The streets were silent, save for the occasional delivery truck. Izuku stood outside a nondescript brick building in the industrial district. It looked like a converted warehouse. A rusted sign hung over the door, Ken Fitness Dojo. He was wearing his green pea tracksuit. He had jogged here, a 4-mile run that had left him winded and aching before he even started. His ribs were taped up, thanks to a YouTube tutorial he had watched the night before. He checked his watch. 3:58 a.m. He waited. He didn't want to be early and annoy the hero, but he terrified of being late. At 3 hours 59 minutes and 50 seconds he reached for the door handle. The door swung open before he touched it. Vlad King stood there. He wasn't in his hero costume. He wore a tight black tank top and gray sweatpants. Without the bulky armor, he was still massive, a mountain of muscle and scars. His arms were covered in small, pale lines, scars from where he had drawn blood for his quirk over the years. You're on time, Vlad grunted, looking at his watch. Barely. Good morning, sir. Izuku bowed. Save your breath, Vlad stepped aside. Get in. The interior of the gym smelled of stale sweat, iron, and chalk. It wasn't a fancy commercial gym. There were no treadmills with TV screens. There were heavy bags, squat racks, climbing ropes, and a wrestling mat that looked like it had been scrubbed clean 1,000 times. Drop your bag, Vlad ordered. Izuku dropped his bag near the door. This, Vlad said, gesturing to the empty gym, is where you will spend every morning for the next 10 months until the UA entrance exam. You will hate this room. You will hate me. But by the time you leave, you will be forged. He turned to Izuku. I looked into your record last night. Alder at junior high. Grades are top tier. Physical fitness scores are average. Quirk status, none. Yes, sir, Izuku said. Average isn't good enough, Vlad said. If you are quirkless, you need to be peak human. You need to be stronger than the guys with strength quirks. Faster than the guys with speed quirks. You need to understand leverage, anatomy, and psychology. Vlad walked over to a whiteboard and picked up a marker. He drew a crude stick figure. This is the average villain, Vlad said. He relies on his quirk. He fights sloppy. He telegraphs his moves. He drew another stick figure, this one smaller. This is you. If you trade punches, you lose. So, we don't trade punches. Vlad turned to Izuku, his eyes intense. We cheat. Cheat? Izuku blinked. We fight dirty, Vlad corrected. Eye gouges. Throat strikes. Joint locks. Distractions. Using the environment. Heroes have rules of engagement, yes. But the first rule of being a hero is don't die. If you are dead, you can't save anyone. He pointed to the wrestling mat. Take off your shoes. Izuku scrambled to comply. Get on the mat. Izuku stepped onto the mat. Vlad walked onto the mat opposite him. Attack me? What? Izuku froze. But I can't. I said attack me. Vlad roared. Izuku flinched, then gritted his teeth. He charged. He threw a punch, aiming for Vlad's stomach, copying the form he had seen All Might use on TV. Vlad didn't even blink. He swatted Izuku's arm aside with contemptuous ease, stepped inside his guard, and swept his leg. The world flipped upside down. Izuku slammed into the mat back first. The air left his lungs again. Get up, Vlad barked. Izuku groaned, rolling over and scrambling to his feet. Again. Izuku charged again. This time he tried to kick. Vlad caught his leg, twisted, and threw him. Izuku landed face first this time. Telegraphed, Vlad critiqued. You tense your shoulders before you move. Again. For the next hour, Izuku hit the mat. Again. And again. And again. He was thrown, swept, pinned, and tossed like a rag doll. His body screamed. His old bruises throbbed, and new ones formed. Why are you attacking my front? Vlad asked calmly, as Izuku lay gasping on the floor for the 50th time. I am twice your size. Why are you trying to overpower me? I don't know. Izuku wheezed. Think. Vlad tapped his temple. If you can't go through the wall, go around it. Use my momentum. Or better yet, don't engage until you have an advantage. Vlad reached down and hauled Izuku up by the back of his tracksuit. You have a brain, Midoriya. I saw those notebooks in your bag. You analyze heroes. You analyze villains. Start analyzing yourself. He let go. Izuku wobbled but stayed standing. Class 1A, Vlad said suddenly. The hero course. Everyone wants to be in 1A. It's where All Might teaches. It's the spotlight. I want to go to UA, Izuku said. I teach Class 1B, Vlad said. We are the support class. The reserves. The leftovers. That's what the media calls us. But let me tell you something about Class 1B. Vlad grinned, showing his teeth. We are hungrier. While 1A is busy signing autographs, we are in the mud, training. We know we aren't the chosen ones. So we choose ourselves. He poked Izuku in the chest. You are not a chosen one, Midoriya. The universe didn't give you a gift. So you are going to have to take it. You belong in my class. You belong with the ones who have to fight for every inch. Izuku felt a shiver run down his spine. It wasn't fear this time. It was resonance. The ones who have to fight for every inch. Yes, sensei. Izuku shouted. Don't call me sensei yet, Vlad growled. You haven't survived the first day. He pointed to a heavy sled in the corner, stacked with iron plates. Push that to the end of the room and back. 50 times. Then we start strength training. Izuku looked at the sled. It looked like it weighed more than he did. Move! Izuku ran to the sled. He gripped the handles. He pushed. It didn't move. He gritted his teeth. He dug his heels into the rubber floor. He thought of Bakugo's smirk. He thought of the thugs in the alley. He thought of the kitten. Push. The sled groaned and moved an inch. Push. Another inch. Vlad King watched from the center of the room, his arms crossed. He saw the boy's legs shaking. He saw the sweat pouring off him. But he also saw the determination. Vlad permitted himself a small, private smile. All Might found his successor? Good for him, Vlad thought. But I think I just found a survivor. Keep your back straight, Midoriya. Vlad barked. Drive with your legs. Blood pumps faster when you're angry. Use it. Yes, sir. The sled moved. Slowly, painfully, grinding against the floor. Outside, the sun began to rise over Mizurufu, casting long shadows across the city. The rain had stopped. In the dim light of the gym, the forging of a new kind of hero had begun. Not a symbol of peace, shining bright and distant, but a hero of flesh, bone, and iron. A hero who would not break. Izuku Midoriya pushed the sled, and with every step, he left Deku behind. The alarm clock didn't buzz. It didn't beep. It screamed. At 3:30 a.m., the digital wail tore through the silence of the Midoriya apartment. A hand, calloused and wrapped in white sports tape, slammed down on the snooze button with practiced precision. Izuku Midoriya sat up in the dark. His body was a map of dull aches. His trapezius muscles felt like tight cables. His quads burned with a low-level fever that never seemed to fully dissipate. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his feet hitting the floor with a heavy thud. 10 months. It had been 1 month since the incident in the alleyway. 1 month since the blood hero, Vlad King, had picked him up off the pavement and offered him a different kind of salvation. Izuku walked to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. He looked in the mirror. The round, baby-face softness was beginning to recede. His jawline was slightly sharper, his neck thicker, but the biggest change was in the eyes. The nervous, skittish tremor was gone, replaced by a dull, focused exhaustion. He didn't have time to be nervous anymore. He barely had time to be awake. In the kitchen, a meal plan was taped to the refrigerator. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a commandment written in Vlad King's sharp, angular handwriting. 345 caloric intake 1, complex carbs, lean protein. 800 calories. Hydrate. Izuku opened the fridge. It was stocked with Tupperware containers prepared by his mother, who had taken to this new regime with a fervor that matched his own. She worried, but she cooked. It was her way of fighting alongside him. He shoveled cold brown rice and boiled chicken into his mouth, chewing mechanically. Food wasn't enjoyment anymore. It was fuel. It was the raw material required to repair the muscle fibers Vlad King destroyed every single morning. He finished, drank a tall glass of water, and grabbed his gym bag. "I'm off," he whispered to the silent apartment. The city was still asleep, but Izuku was awake. He began the run to the industrial district. The dojo. The sign for Can Fitness Dojo was flickering today, the neon buzzing like an angry insect. Izuku pushed the door open. The smell hit him instantly, a cocktail of stale sweat, chalk, iron, and liniment oil. It was the smell of work. Vlad King was already there, standing by the squat rack. He was loading plates onto a bar that bent slightly under the weight. "You're 30 seconds slower than yesterday," Vlad rumbled without turning around. "Traffic light on 4th Street, Izuku panted, dropping his bag. "I had to wait." "Excuses don't build mass, Midoriya. Run faster next time or time the lights better." Vlad turned, his eyes scanning Izuku up and down. "Weight, 62 kilograms, Izuku reported. He had gained 4 kilos in a month. Not fat. Dense, compacted muscle. Acceptable. But you're still light. If a villain with a gigantification quirk hits you, you'll fly into the next prefecture. We need you to be an anchor. A tank." Vlad pointed to the floor. "Warm up. 500 burpees. Then we grapple." Izuku didn't complain. He didn't ask if Vlad was joking. He just dropped to the floor and began. 1, 2, 3. The training at the house of Vlad was fundamentally different from what Izuku had read about in hero interviews. All Might's interviews always talked about spirit and saving hearts. Best Jeanist talked about image and control. Vlad King talked about biomechanics and brutality. "Lower!" Vlad barked, pacing around Izuku as he sweated through the third set of hundreds. "Your center of gravity is too high. In a fight, the man who controls the hips wins. If you stand tall, you fall hard. Get low. Become a part of the floor." Izuku gritted his teeth, his chest heaving. "Yes, sir." By the time the warm-up was done, a pool of sweat had formed beneath him. But the session was just beginning. "Notebooks," Vlad said, walking over to the bench where Izuku kept his analysis journals. Izuku wiped his face with a towel. "Sir?" Vlad picked up Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. He flipped through it, his thick fingers turning the pages. "I read these last week. Your analysis of Kamui Woods is decent. You identified his weakness to fire and desiccation. He looked up. But your analysis of his combat style is trash. Izuku flinched. I tried to capture his special moves. You wrote down the names of his moves, Vlad corrected. Lacquer chain prison? Preemptive binding. That's fanba nonsense. What is the mechanic? Vlad tossed the notebook back to Izuku. You're looking at heroes like they're performing magic tricks. Stop it. Look at them like engines. Kamui Woods extends his limbs. That creates a lever arm. If you catch a branch near the torso, you have no leverage. If you catch it at the tip, you have maximum torque. You can snap him like a twig if you apply force at the fulcrum. He walked to the center of the wrestling mat. Come here. Izuku stepped onto the mat. Grab my arm, Vlad ordered. Pretend I'm Kamui Woods extending a limb. Izuku grabbed Vlad's massive forearm with both hands. Now try to move me. Izuku pulled. He pushed. He strained until his face turned red. Vlad stood like a statue. Bored? You're using your arms, Vlad sighed. Your biceps are small. My arm is bigger than your head. Physics says you lose. Vlad stepped in. Now watch. In a blur of motion, Vlad didn't pull Izuku. He stepped into him. He placed his hip against Izuku's hip, locked his arm under Izuku's armpit, and rotated his torso. It wasn't a contest of strength. It was a sudden removal of gravity. Izuku went airborne, slamming into the mat with a breath-stealing wham. I didn't lift you, Vlad said, looking down at the gasping boy. I took away your base. I used my hips, the strongest part of the body, against your shoulder, a weak joint. That is how a quirkless nobody beats a powerhouse. Vlad reached down and hauled Izuku up. You love to analyze, Midoriya. Fine. But stop analyzing how cool they look. Analyze how they balance. Analyze where their weight is. Analyze which way their knees point. If you can read a villain's balance, you can put him on the ground before he even fires his quirk. Izuku nodded, his mind racing. He had always looked at quirks as the variable. Vlad was teaching him that the human body was the constant. Knees only bent one way. Necks were fragile. Gravity applied to everyone. Again, Vlad ordered. And this time, cheat. Cheat? Step on my foot before you throw me. Headbutt me. Dig your knuckles into my radial nerve. I don't care about honor. I care about you going home alive. Izuku took a breath. He looked at Vlad's arm. He didn't see the blood hero. He saw a lever. He saw a mass with a center of gravity. He stepped in. Aldera Junior High, Month 6. The change was subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Izuku Midoriya had stopped shrinking. For years, his posture had been an apology. Shoulders hunched, head down, trying to occupy as little space as possible. Now he sat upright. His uniform, once loose, was starting to strain across the shoulders. He didn't mutter frantically anymore. He sat in silence, his pen scratching rhythmically across his notebook. Bakugo Katsuki didn't like it. It was lunch break. The classroom was noisy, but a bubble of silence existed around Izuku's desk. Bakugo marched over, his lackeys trailing behind him. Deku. Bakugo slammed his hand onto Izuku's desk. A small pop of an explosion scorched the wood. Usually, this was the part where Deku flinched. The part where he stammered H-high, Kaken, and tried to make himself small. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't even stop writing immediately. He finished his sentence, capped his pen, and slowly looked up. His eyes were dark, rimmed with the shadows of sleep deprivation, but steady. What do you want, Katsuki? The room went quiet. He hadn't called him Kaken. He had used his name. And the tone wasn't fearful. It was tired. It was the tone of someone who had bigger problems than a middle school bully. Bakugo's eye twitched. You think you're tough now? Because you're lifting weights? You're still a quirkless defect. I know, Izuku said calmly. Is that all? Don't ignore me. Bakugo snarled. He lunged, grabbing Izuku by the collar of his uniform. You're looking down on me, aren't you? You think just because you bulked up a little, you can stand on the same stage as me? Izuku looked at Bakugo's hand clutching his collar. Analysis. Right hand grip. Weight shifted forward onto the balls of his feet. Left arm hanging loose, likely preparing for a follow-up explosion. His center of gravity is extended over the desk. In his mind, Izuku saw the lines of force. He saw the opening. A simple wrist lock, a twist of the hips, and he could slam Bakugo's face into the wood. It would take less than 2 seconds. Vlad King's voice echoed in his head, "Don't engage unless necessary. Save your energy. Your enemy is the villain, not the ego." Izuku slowly raised his hands, palms open. "I'm not looking down on you, Katsuki. I'm just studying." "Studying for what?" Bakugo sneered. "Yue? You're gonna die in the exam, you nerd," maybe Izuku said. "But I'm going to try." He didn't pull away. He didn't fight back. He just stared at Bakugo with those dead, analytical eyes. It was unnerving. It was like looking into the eyes of a statue. Bakugo shoved him back into his chair. It felt unsatisfying. It felt like shoving a sandbag. There was no fear to feed on. "Tch, whatever," Bakugo spat, turning away. "Don't come crying to me when you get crushed." As Bakugo walked away, Izuku picked up his pen. He opened a new page in his notebook. Target, Bakugo Katsuki. Weakness, pride. Over-reliance on right-hook initiation. Telegraphs anger before striking. Counter-strategy. Provoke, wait for the overextension, sweep the lead leg. Izuku didn't hate Bakugo anymore. He didn't fear him. He just categorized him. The sludge villain, month 10. The day of destiny didn't start with a bang. It started with a shopping trip. Vlad had given Izuku the afternoon off, a rare occurrence. Taper week, he had called it. The UA entrance exam was 10 days away. Your muscles need recovery. Go buy a new pair of running shoes. Your current ones are held together by hope and duct tape. Izuku was walking through the Tatooine shopping district, enjoying the strange sensation of not being in physical pain. He felt heavy, but solid. At 15 years old, he now weighed 70 kilograms. He wasn't tall, but he was dense. A block of condensed effort. He heard the explosion before he saw it. People were screaming. Smoke billowed from an alleyway, thick and black. Izuku's feet moved before his brain gave the order. Conditioning. He ran toward the crowd. He pushed through the onlookers, ignoring the police barricade tape. "Stay back, kid! It's dangerous!" A hero shouted, "Death arms!" Izuku ignored him. He reached the front of the line and looked. It was a nightmare. A villain made of sludge had engulfed a student. Explosions were popping off wildly, setting fires to the surrounding buildings. The heroes, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, were standing around, helpless. "I can't get close," Death Arms yelled. "Whatever I punch just slips through. I need a 2-lane road," Empty Lady complained. Izuku narrowed his eyes. He scanned the villain. Fluid body. No solid mass to strike. But he has eyes. He has a mouth. He's holding a hostage. Through the shifting muck, he saw a face. Bakugo. Bakugo's eyes were wide, filled with a terror Izuku had never seen before. He was suffocating. The sludge was forcing itself down his throat. The heroes were waiting for someone with the right quirk. Vlad King. Heroes don't wait for the right conditions. They make them. Izuku's backpack hit the ground. "Hey! Stop!" Death Arms shouted. Izuku sprinted. He didn't run with the flailing desperation of his former self. He ran low, his center of gravity dropped, his arms pumping. The sludge villain saw him coming. "Another insect? I'll swallow you whole." A tendril of sludge lashed out like a whip. Izuku didn't stop. He saw the attack coming. He slid. Like a baseball player stealing home, Izuku dropped to his hip, sliding across the pavement under the sludge whip. The asphalt tore at his tracksuit, but he ignored it. He popped up instantly inside the villain's guard. "What?" The villain garbled. Izuku didn't punch the sludge. That would be useless. He jumped. He wasn't aiming for the villain. He was aiming for Bakugo. He grabbed Bakugo's collar with one hand and jammed his other hand, fingers reinforced with months of grip training, straight into the sludge villain's eye. "Gah!" The villain shrieked, the fluid body recoiling from the sudden, sharp pain. Fluid dynamics, Izuku thought. Disrupt the surface tension. "Let him go!" Izuku roared. He didn't pull Bakugo out. He planted his feet on the villain's semi-solid chest and pushed. A deadlift motion, all the power in his legs, back, and hips driving downward while his arm pulled upward. Tear. For a second, the sludge gave way. Bakugo's head and shoulders ripped free from the muck. He gasped, coughing up slime. Deku? Bakugo wheezed. Breathe. Izuku commanded. Don't talk, breathe, you little brat. The villain recovered. The pain in his eye was gone, replaced by rage. The sludge swirled, reforming around Izuku's arm, trapping him alongside Bakugo. I'll kill you both. The pressure was immense. It felt like being crushed by a hydraulic press. Hold on. Izuku gritted his teeth. He wedged his free arm into the sludge, creating a pocket of air. He wasn't trying to win. He was stalling. He was being the tank, buy time. Seconds matter. Make him bleed. Make him hurt. Izuku headbutted the sludge where the nose should be. It did nothing but coat his forehead in slime. You're dead. The villain laughed, raising a massive wave of sludge to crush them. Izuku looked up. He was going to die. He had failed Vlad, but he hadn't run away. Suddenly, the air pressure changed. The fire around them flickered and died. The smoke cleared instantly. A large hand grabbed the back of Izuku's shirt. Another grabbed Bakugo's. I really am pathetic. A booming voice shook the very ground. Izuku looked back. Standing there, steam rising from his body, blood trickling from his mouth, was All Might. But he wasn't smiling. He looked furious. Furious at the villain, furious at himself. I admonish you for not having a quirk, All Might roared, pulling back a fist that glowed with raw power. Yet here you are, teaching me what it means to act. Detroit. Smash! The world turned white. The wind pressure alone vaporized the sludge. The clouds above the city were punched into a hole, changing the weather instantly. Rain began to fall. Izuku and Bakugo were shielded by All Might's massive bulk. As the dust settled, All Might stood tall, his fist raised. The crowd erupted. Izuku sat on the pavement, gasping for air. His arms were shaking. He was covered in slime. He looked at his hands. He hadn't saved Bakugo. All Might had. But he had bought the time. The aftermath. The scolding was predictable. That was reckless. You could have gotten yourself killed. Kamui Woods was lecturing Izuku, pointing a wooden finger in his face. You have no quirk. You were a liability. You interfered with professional work. Death Arms added, crossing his massive arms. You should have waited for someone with a suitable quirk. Izuku stood silently, taking it. He knew the protocol. He broke the law. Nearby, Bakugo was being praised. That quirk is amazing. You held out so long. You're definitely hero material. The contrast was bitter. Are you listening to me, kid? Death Arms stepped closer, looming over Izuku. You need to learn your place. His place, a deep, grinding voice cut through the lecture, was exactly where he needed to be. Between the civilian and the threat, the heroes froze. The crowd quieted. Walking through the police line, flashing his hero license to a stunned officer, was Vlad King. He wasn't in costume. He was wearing a tight t-shirt and cargo pants, looking like an off-duty soldier. But his presence was heavier than anyone else's. Vlad King? Kamui Woods blinked. What are you doing here? Picking up my student, Vlad said. He walked past the heroes and stood next to Izuku. He placed a heavy hand on Izuku's shoulder. Izuku looked up, terrified. Sensei. Quiet, Vlad murmured. He looked at Death Arms. You say he was a liability? I saw the footage. He created an opening. He disrupted the villain's vision. He secured an airway for the hostage. What were you doing? Standing around waiting for a permission slip. We didn't have the right matchup. Death Arms defended. There is no such thing as a bad matchup, Vlad snarled. There is only the job. This kid has zero power. You have super strength. Yet he moved, and you watched. Vlad steered Izuku away from the heroes. We're leaving. You have a police statement to give, then we're going to the gym. You used your back wrong on that lift. We need to correct it. Izuku felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't being expelled? He wasn't being disowned? Wait! All Might emerged from the crowd of reporters surrounding him. He looked deflated, literally. Steam was rolling off him. He walked over to Vlad and Izuku. Vlad King, All Might said. His voice was breathless, lacking its usual boom, but still commanding. Can I have a word with the boy? Vlad eyed All Might suspiciously. The two teachers respected each other, but their philosophies were oil and water. Make it quick, All Might, Vlad said. We have a schedule. Vlad stepped back a few paces, crossing his arms, acting as a guard dog. All Might looked at Izuku. The skeletal, true form of the hero was shocking up close, but Izuku had seen enough online rumors to not be totally blindsided. Young man, All Might said softly. I need to apologize. Earlier today, I told you that you couldn't be a hero without a quirk. Izuku nodded. I remember. I was wrong, All Might said. He placed a hand on his chest. Back there, you were the only one who acted. You spurred me to action. You have the heart of a hero. More than anyone else here. Izuku's eyes widened. Hearing it from All Might, it was different than hearing it from Vlad. Vlad validated his effort. All Might validated his soul. I have a secret, young man, All Might whispered. My quirk, it can be passed on. Izuku's brain stopped. Passed on? It is a torch, passed from holder to holder. And I want you to be the next bearer. The offer hung in the air. The greatest power in the world. The power to be the symbol of peace. Izuku looked at All Might. Then, he looked over All Might's shoulder at Vlad King. Vlad was checking his watch, looking annoyed, but he was waiting. He had stood up for Izuku against the pros. He had spent 10 months breaking him down and building him back up. All Might, Izuku said slowly. If I take this power, do I have to be like you? All Might blinked. Like me? Do I have to smile? Izuku asked. Do I have to tell everyone it's going to be okay? Because I don't think I can do that. I'm not bright. He looked at his scarred hands. I've been taught to survive. To fight dirty. To be the underdog. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the grit. He saw the influence of the blood hero. It wasn't the successor he had imagined, a shining beacon of hope. This was something else. A warrior. You don't have to be me, All Might said softly. One for all is power. How you use it, that is up to you. Izuku looked at Vlad again. Can I stay with Sensei? Izuku asked. I don't want to leave his training. He picked me up when no one else would. All Might smiled. It was a genuine, small smile. Sekijiro is a fine hero. Stubborn as a mule, but a fine hero. Yes. You keep your teacher. But let me give you the tool to finish the job. All Might plucked a hair from his head. Eat this. The meeting. Later that evening, inside the faculty lounge at UA High, Vlad King sat on the sofa, nursing a black coffee. All Might, in his skeletal form, sat opposite him, looking nervous. So, Vlad said, his voice flat. You gave him your quirk. I did, All Might admitted, without consulting me. His legal guardian for all intents and purposes regarding his training. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision. All Might coughed blood. The boy has the spirit. You saw it, Vlad sighed, rubbing his temples. I saw it. That's why I picked him. But do you realize what you've done, Toshinori? I've given him a chance to be the top. You've given a tank a nuclear warhead, Vlad corrected. I spent 10 months training that kid to fight as if he has nothing. To rely on leverage, pain tolerance, and tactics. Now suddenly he has super strength. Vlad leaned forward. He's going to break himself. He's used to pushing past limits because his body was the only limit. With your quirk? He'll blow his arms off. That is a concern, All Might admitted. The power is volatile. Concern? Vlad laughed, a bark of a sound. It's a logistical nightmare. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the campus. But Vlad said quietly, it settles one thing. What's that? I was worried he would die, Vlad admitted. I was training him to be a hero, but deep down, I knew. Without a quirk, one mistake, one villain with a lethal emitter type, and he's gone. I was sending a sheep into a wolf den, armed with nothing but sharp teeth. Vlad turned back to All Might. Now? He has the gun. And I've taught him how to aim. Vlad extended his hand. I'll handle his physical conditioning and combat training. You teach him how to control the nuke. But he stays in my jurisdiction. If he passes the exam, he comes to Class 1B. All Might stood up and shook the hand. 1B? But surely. No, Vlad cut him off. Class 1A is a circus. Media, villains, spotlights. He's not ready for that. He needs to cook. He needs the underdog mentality. If you put him in 1A, he'll try to be you. If he stays with me, he'll be himself. All Might considered it. The boy was different. Perhaps the symbol needed to evolve. Agreed, All Might said. The entrance exam, the morning of, the beach was clean. Not because Izuku cleaned it, but because it was just a beach. Izuku stood at the entrance to UA High. He felt the strand of DNA sitting in his stomach, digesting. He didn't feel any different yet. No lightning. No glowing eyes. Just the solid, reassuring weight of his own body. Vlad King stood by the gate, checking students in. He saw Izuku approaching. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just gave a curt nod. Remember the leverage, the nod said. Remember the hips. Izuku nodded back. He walked through the gates. He saw Bakugo glaring at him. He saw other students looking nervous. Izuku took a deep breath. I am not the symbol of peace, he thought. I am not All Might. He clenched his fist. The skin was rough, callous from thousands of pull-ups and hundreds of hours of grappling. I am the Blood Heroes student. And I am here to win. The sunrise on the day of the UA entrance exam was pale and watery, the sun struggling to pierce through a bank of slate-gray clouds. It was cold for February, the kind of cold that seeped into the bones and made joints stiff. For most 15-year-olds, this weather was a nuisance. For Izuku Midoriya, it was just another variable to manage. He stood on the edge of Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It wasn't the sparkling paradise it could have been. He hadn't spent his 10 months cleaning trash. He had spent them in a windowless gym, pushing iron until his vision blurred. But the sea air was good for clearing the lungs. Next to him stood All Might. The skeletal figure of the symbol of peace looked out at the ocean, clutching a small bento box. You look ready, young Midoriya, All Might said, his voice raspy. Different but ready. Izuku adjusted the strap of his backpack. He was wearing his black middle school uniform, but underneath, his body was taped and braced. Kinesiology tape ran along his shoulders and hamstrings, a trick Vlad King had taught him to support the muscles during high-stress impact. I feel heavy, Izuku admitted. Not just the muscle. The expectation. That is the burden of the hero, All Might nodded. He reached up and plucked a long, blonde hair from his head. But you need one last thing. The key to the ignition. He held out the hair. Eat this. Izuku stared at the hair. Then he looked at All Might. That's unhygienic? It's the most efficient DNA transfer. All Might insisted, blood spurting from his mouth in embarrassment. Just swallow it down. Time is wasting. Izuku took the hair. He didn't hesitate long. 10 months ago, he would have panicked. Now, he treated it like a bad-tasting supplement. Protein is protein, Vlad's voice echoed in his head. He swallowed it dry. He waited for a surge of power, lightning, anything. Nothing happened. It takes time to digest, All Might explained, reading his expression. It will be in your system by the time the practical exam starts. But Midoriya, a warning. All Might's expression turned serious. The blue eyes in his sunken sockets glowed with intensity. You have trained your body to be a fortress. But One for All is a siege breaker. It is raw stockpiled power. If you use it at 100% with your current build, you will break. Vlad King has conditioned you to take a hit, but this power hits from the inside. I know, Izuku said. Sensei. Vlad Sensei told me. He said it's a nuke. You don't use a nuke for a street fight. Exactly, All Might smiled, relieved. Use your training. Use the strength you built on your own. Only use One for All if there is no other option. If you can pass the exam without it, that would be for the best. Izuku clenched his fist. The skin was rough, the knuckles slightly enlarged from striking sandbags. I didn't spend 10 months bleeding on a mat to rely on a lottery ticket, Izuku said quietly. I'll win with my own hands. All Might watched him go, a mix of pride and trepidation in his chest. He's so intense, the hero thought. Sekijiro, what have you created? The written exam. The written portion was a reprieve. It was silent. It was logical. Izuku sat in the large lecture hall, the scratching of pencils the only sound. He breezed through the questions. English, history, mathematics. They were standard, but the heroic section was where he shined. Question 44. A villain with a hydrokinesis quirk has taken hostages in a subway tunnel. The water level is rising. Describe the optimal entry strategy. Most students would write about evaporation quirks or freezing the water. Izuku wrote, disrupt the villain's line of sight using non-lethal flashbangs to break concentration-based control. Isolate the villain from the water source if possible. If not, utilize the subway's electrical grid to create a perimeter, assuming hostages are insulated. Prioritize villain incapacitation over rescue, as the water level is the immediate threat controlled by the villain's consciousness. It was cold. It was tactical. It was exactly the kind of answer Vlad King would give. Izuku put his pencil down. He looked 2 rows over. Bakugo was writing furiously, looking like he was trying to stab the paper. He's relying on intuition, Izuku analyzed. He's smart, but he thinks linearly. Blast and win. I need to think laterally. The orientation. Everybody say hey. Present Mick's voice boomed through the auditorium, amplified by his quirk and the massive speakers. Silence answered him. Izuku sat in the middle row, his notebook open. He wasn't drawing the costume of the voice hero. He was sketching the layout of the battle centers displayed on the screen. Urban environments. Lots of cover. Narrow streets. Good for ambush. Bad for wide-range emitters. Tough crowd. Present Mike shrugged. Alright, listen up, examinees. We're gonna test your mettle in a 10-minute mock battle. As Mike explained the 3 types of villain bots, Izuku's pen flew across the page. 1-pointer, speed type. Weak armor. Likely vulnerable at the wheel axis. 2-pointer, blocker type. Heavy shielding. Don't punch the shield. Flank it. 3-pointer, heavy assault. Missiles? Machine guns? Avoid head-on engagement. Excuse me, a hand shot up in the crowd. A tall boy with glasses and blue hair stood up, his posture rigid. May I ask a question? The boy shouted. There appear to be 4 types of villains on this handout. If this is a misprint, then UA, the most prestigious school in Japan, should be ashamed of such a foolish error. He pointed an accusatory finger backward, directly at Izuku. And you? With the curly hair. Izuku looked up, blinking. He hadn't been muttering. He had been dead silent. You've been glaring at that notebook with such intensity it's distracting. The boy Ida Tenya scolded. If you're here to stare down your notes instead of listening to the presentation, you should leave immediately. The auditorium rippled with snickers. Old Izuku would have blushed, stammered, and apologized profusely. New Izuku felt a spike of annoyance. Distraction. Waste of energy. He slowly stood up. He didn't hunch. He turned to face Ida. I'm analyzing the battlefield specs, Izuku said. His voice wasn't loud, but it projected clearly, a trick Vlad had taught him for communicating commands in a chaotic gym. Knowing the terrain is half the battle. If my focus distracts you, perhaps you lack the concentration required for a combat zone. The snickers died instantly. A heavy silence fell over the room. Ida looked stunned, his mouth slightly open. He hadn't expected a rebuttal, let alone one that questioned his own competence. Aye, well. Ida adjusted his glasses, flustered. Sit down, examinee 7111, Present Mike interjected, though he looked amused. And you too, examinee 2234. But the curly-haired listener is right. Prep time is key. However, the 4th robot is the 0-pointer. It's an obstacle. A gimmick. There's no point in fighting it, so run away. Izuku sat down. He ignored the stares burning into the back of his head. He ignored Bakugo's confused glance. 0-pointer. Massive size. Avoidance recommended. Izuku circled the entry 0 pointer in his notebook. Next to it he wrote, Run, Battle Center B. The gates of Battle Center B were towering, imposing slabs of steel. A crowd of students gathered before them, stretching and psyching themselves up. Izuku stood near the back. He wore a simple green tracksuit, not the fancy spandex costumes some of the other kids had bought. He wore heavy-duty combat boots with reinforced toes, and thick gloves with knuckle guards. He bounced on the balls of his feet. Rhythm. Find the rhythm. He spotted the girl with the brown bob cut, Uraraka Ochako, standing nervously nearby. She looked like she was about to throw up. He considered going over to wish her luck, but then he remembered Vlad's words. Before a fight you don't make friends. You make space. Start. Present mixed voice screamed from the tower. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Go! 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 While the other students processed the sudden start, Izuku was already moving. He didn't sprint blindly. He launched into a low, driving run. He was the first one through the gate. First blood, he thought. He turned a corner into a mock city street. A one-pointer, a one-wheeled robot with long, whipping arms, rolled out from behind a building. Target acquired. The robot synthesized. It lunged. Izuku didn't use one for all. He didn't have to. He saw the robot's arm extending. Telegraphed. He stepped inside the guard. He grabbed the robot's extending arm, using its own momentum to pull it forward. With a grunt of exertion, he jammed his reinforced boot into the robot's central wheel hub. Crunch. Metal screeched. The wheel locked up. The robot's momentum carried it forward, flipping it face first into the pavement. Izuku didn't stop. He jumped onto the back of the downed robot. He grabbed the exposed wiring at the base of its neck, a weak point he had theorized from the silhouette. Off, he grunted. He ripped the wires out with a savage tear. The robot's eye dimmed. 1 point. He rolled off the chassis and kept running. Whoa! Did you see that guy? A student yelled from behind. He didn't use a quirk. He just dismantled it. Izuku tuned them out. He was in the zone. The zone Vlad had forced him into day after day. Breathe. Scan. Engage. A 3-pointer appeared. A massive, tank-like drone with missile launchers. Izuku skidded to a halt. Too big to grapple. Too heavy to trip. A student with a laser navel fired a beam, glancing off the 3-pointer's armor. It's too thick. Izuku looked around. Environment. Use the environment. He saw a fire escape ladder hanging low on the building next to the robot. He sprinted up the wall, grabbing the ladder and swinging himself up. He was now above the robot. Hey! Over here! Izuku yelled. The 3-pointer's turret swiveled up. Izuku jumped. He didn't aim for the armor. He aimed for the sensor array. The eyes on top of the turret. Gravity 70 kilograms of dense muscle-reinforced boots. He landed with both feet on the glass sensors. Smash! The glass shattered. The robot went haywire, firing missiles blindly into the sky. It spun in circles, crashing into a wall and disabling itself. 4 points. Izuku dropped to the ground, rolling to disperse the impact. His ankle stung, but the tape held. That's how we do it, he muttered, wiping grease from his cheek. The observation room. In a dark room filled with screens, the teachers of UA watched. This year's batch shows promise, Midnight purred, watching a student with explosion powers destroy a robot. That Bakugo boy is ferocious. High combat ability, but low situational awareness, Aizawa noted dryly. He's causing collateral damage to the buildings. And look at this one, Cementos pointed to a screen. Student 2234. No quirk registration. Yet he has 28 points? On the screen, Izuku was currently using a detached metal pipe to pry the casing off a 2-pointer. He looked like a mechanic from hell. He was covered in oil, dust, and sweat. He moved with a brutal, efficient economy. He fights like a quirkless vigilante, Sniper commented. Dangerous style. If he slips, he's dead. He won't slip, a deep voice rumbled from the back of the room. Vlad King stood with his arms crossed, his eyes fixed on Izuku's screen. Oh? Mizu, the principal, turned his chair. You know this examinee Sekijiro? I know him, Vlad said. Watch his hips. Watch how he checks his corners. He's not fighting for points. He's fighting for survival. He's violent, Aizawa critiqued. He just dislocated that robot's arm instead of destroying the core. Why? To use the arm as a weapon against the next one, Vlad answered. Efficiency. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. It's effective against robots. Against people, that style creates lawsuits. It creates survivors, Vlad shot back. Enough, Nisa smiled. Let's see how they handle the final variable. Release the Leviathan. He pressed a red button. Battle center be the climax. The ground shook. Izuku had 45 points. It was a solid score. He was breathing hard, his knuckles bruised through the gloves, a scrape bleeding on his forehead. He was about to engage another two-pointer when the vibration stopped him. Earthquake? No. Rhythmic. Boom, boom. From the end of the main street, a monstrosity rose. The zero-pointer. It was taller than the skyscrapers. It blotted out the sun. Dust billowed through the streets. Debris rained down. Run! It's huge! The other examinees broke. Panic took over. They turned and fled, screaming. Izuku froze. His instincts, Vlad's instincts, screamed retreat. This was an unwinnable fight. There was no joint to lock, no sensor to smash that he could reach. It was a force of nature. He turned to run. Oh wow! The cry was faint, buried under the sound of crushing concrete. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Through the dust, he saw her. The girl with the brown bob cut. Uraraka. She was pinned under a slab of concrete. The zero-pointer was rolling toward her. Its massive treads were grinding the road to dust. It was maybe 30 seconds away from crushing her. Izuku's brain split in two. Vlad's voice. You can't save anyone if you're dead. Cut your losses. Someone else will get her. All Might's voice. Meddling where you don't belong is the essence of a hero. Izuku looked at his legs. They were trembling. Not from fear, but from the buildup of energy. The DNA he had swallowed was finally waking up. He felt a hum in his veins, a heat in his stomach that spread to his chest. He looked at the robot. He looked at the girl. Damn it, Izuku hissed. He turned around. He sprinted toward the zero-pointer. Hey! Kid! Don't! A student yelled. Izuku ignored them. He reached the slab of concrete pinning Uraraka. He gripped the edge. Lift with the legs. He heaved. The concrete shifted, but it was too heavy. The robot was looming over them, its shadow casting them in darkness. I can't move it. Uraraka whimpered, her face pale. Izuku looked up. The robot's hand was descending, reaching out to clear the debris and them from its path. I can't move the rock. So I have to move the threat. Izuku let go of the rock. He crouched. He closed his eyes for a microsecond. He reached into that deep, burning well of power All Might had given him. He didn't try to control it. He didn't try to spread it out. He just opened the floodgates, one for all. He felt the power surge into his legs. It felt like sticking a fork in a socket. Gra! Izuku launched himself. He didn't jump. He exploded upward. The pavement beneath him shattered into a crater. The wind roared in his ears. He flew past the robot's arm. He was face to face with the massive metal head. He clenched his right fist. He felt the power rushing to his arm, pooling there, threatening to tear his skin apart. Vlad said, if you have to break yourself, make sure the other guy breaks worse. All Might said, smash. Izuku pulled his arm back. He channeled everything, the frustration, the fear, the anger of being quirkless, the hope of being a hero. Smayawash. He punched the metal faceplate. The impact was deafening. The air compressed and detonated. The metal crumpled like tin foil. The shockwave blew the back of the robot's head out. The massive machine groaned, tilted, and began to fall backward, explosions rippling through its chassis. Izuku hovered in the air for a second, suspended in the glory of the hit. Then, the pain hit. His right arm was a ruin. It was purple, twisted, flapping uselessly in the wind. The recoil had shattered the bones. Gravity took hold. He began to fall. I'm falling. High altitude. One arm useless. Legs numb but functional. He looked down. The ground was rushing up fast. Strategy. Strategy. How do I land? Tuck and roll? No, too high. I'll splatter. He needed to create drag. He needed to slow down. Slap! Suddenly, a hand touched his cheek. He stopped falling. He floated. Urarika, freed by the shockwave or perhaps having dragged herself out, was crouched on a piece of debris, panting, her fingers pressed together. Release! She wheezed. Izuku dropped the last 3 feet, hitting the ground. He stumbled, but his legs held. He collapsed to his knees, clutching his broken arm. Gah hhh. He grit his teeth so hard he thought they would crack. The pain was blinding. It was worse than anything in the dojo. The dust settled. The 0-pointer lay smoking in the street. The buzzer sounded. Time's up. Izuku stared at the ground, his vision swimming. I did it. I used the nuke. And I survived. Recovery Girl's tent. You reckless, stupid child. Recovery Girl was bonking Izuku on the head with her cane. You shattered your arm. Completely comminuted fractures. And your legs have microfractures from the jump? What kind of quirk is this? It destroys the user. Izuku sat on the bed, his arm now in a cast. The healing session had drained his stamina. He felt like a husk. I had to stop the robot, Izuku mumbled. You could have died. Recovery Girl sighed, handing him a gummy. You're lucky you have such a dense muscle structure. If a normal boy had channeled that much power, his arm would have been ripped off entirely. Your conditioning saved your limb, not just your life. Izuku looked at his cast. Vlad saved my arm. Will I pass? Izuku asked. That's not for me to decide, Recovery Girl huffed. Now get out. I have other patients. The sorting meeting. The conference room was dimly lit. The holographic screen displayed the leaderboard. 1. Bakugo Katsuki 77 villain points/0 rescue points. 2. Kirishima Ijiro 39 villain points/35 rescue points. 7. Midoriya Izuku 45 villain points/60 rescue points. Wait, Midnight paused. 60 rescue points? For the 0-pointer? He saved the girl, Niza nodded. And he took out the biggest threat. It was a sacrificial play. Highly heroic. He also has 45 villain points, Cementos noted. Without a quirk. That's impressive. It's terrifying, Aizawa said. He stood up, looking at the footage of Izuku breaking his arm. Look at this. He has a quirk, a strength enhancer clearly, but he didn't use it until the very end. Why? Because he can't control it. When he does use it, he destroys himself. Aizawa slammed his hand on the table. I don't want him in Class 1A. The room went silent. Explain, All Might said, shrinking into his seat. He is a liability, Aizawa stated cold logic. If he breaks his bones every time he fights, he is useless in a prolonged engagement. 1A is for students who are ready to be polished. This kid? He needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. If I take him, I will likely expel him on the first day to save him from getting himself killed. Then I'll take him. Vlad King stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. You're afraid he's too self-destructive, Eraser? Vlad walked to the screen, tapping on Izuku's image. You see a liability. I see a weapon that needs a safety catch. He broke his arm, Sekijiro, Aizawa pointed out, and he finished the fight standing up, Vlad countered. I've been watching this kid. I know his style. He fights like a cornered animal. That doesn't fit your logical ruse aesthetic, Aizawa. You want ninjas. You want precision. Vlad slammed his fist into his open palm. I teach Class 1B to be soldiers. We take the hits. We hold the line. This kid, Midoriya, he already fights like one of mine. He relies on grappling, environment, and guts. His quirk is just artillery support. Vlad looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every hero. If you put him in 1A, he will try to keep up with All Might's shadow. He will break himself trying to be the symbol of peace. If you give him to me, I will teach him that it's okay to be the guy in the trenches. I will teach him to control that power through discipline, not idealism. All Might watched the exchange. He wanted to argue. He wanted Izuku close to him. But he looked at Aizawa's cold rejection, and he looked at Vlad's fierce possessiveness. Aizawa would expel him, All Might realized. He would crush young Midoriya's dream to protect him. Vlad wants to harden him. I agree with Vlad King, All Might said softly. Aizawa looked surprised. You do? Young Midoriya needs structure, All Might said. More than I can give him. And perhaps, being out of the immediate spotlight of 1A will be good for him. It will keep the media off his back while he learns to use 1-4, while he learns to use his power. Niza clapped his paws together. It is decided then. Midoriya Izuku receives a total of 105 points, placing him first overall. And he is assigned to Class 1B. Vlad King sat down, a satisfied smirk on his face. Got him. 1 week later, the letter arrived. Izuku sat at his desk, staring at the wax seal of Yue Inko was pacing in the hallway, muttering prayers. He tore it open. A holographic disc fell out. It projected onto the wall. I am here! All Might shouted from the projection. As a projection, All Might? Izuku gasped. Young Midoriya! You passed the written exam with flying colors. And in the practical, the video played the clip of him punching the 0-pointer. You risked everything to save another. That is the essence of heroism. You earned 60 rescue points. Combined with your 45 villain points, you are the top scorer. Izuku felt tears welling up. He did it. However, All Might's voice shifted. He looked off camera. Someone else has a message for you. The projection flickered. The bright, primary colors of All Might were replaced by a darker, red-tinted feed. Vlad King appeared. He was sitting at his desk, arms crossed. Midoriya, Vlad grunted. Stop crying. I know you're crying. Izuku wiped his eyes, startled. Sensei, you passed. Good job. You broke your arm. Bad job. We're going to fix that. Vlad leaned into the camera. You are not going to Class 1A. You are coming to my class. Class 1B. Izuku blinked. 1B? Not with All Might? Don't look disappointed, Vlad scolded, as if he could see through time and space. This is where you belong. You're going to be with the fighters. The grinders. The ones who earn it. Vlad cracked a rare, genuine smile. Welcome to the hero course, Midoriya. Pack your gym bag. Training starts at 0400. Don't be late. The hologram faded. Izuku sat in the silence. He looked at the ranking sheet included in the envelope. 1. Midoriya Izuku, 1B. 2. Bakugo Katsuki, 1A. He was separated from All Might. He was separated from Bakugo. He was in Class 1B. Izuku looked at the business card still taped to his monitor. Can Fitness Dojo. He clenched his healed hand. He didn't feel disappointed. He felt relieved. He didn't have to be the symbol. He just had to be the student. I'm in, Izuku whispered. He stood up and opened his door. Mom! I got in. The halls of Yue High School were wide, pristine, and designed to make you feel small. Sunlight streamed through massive glass windows, illuminating the polished floors where the future saviors of society walked. Izuku Midoriya walked these halls not with the bounce of a dreamer, but with the measured, rolling gait of a grappler. His uniform was crisp, the gray jacket buttoned correctly, but his body filled it out differently than the other students. While most first years were lanky and growing into their limbs, Izuku was compact. His neck was thick, a byproduct of endless wrestler bridges. His hands, hanging by his sides, were taped at the wrists and knuckles, a habit he hadn't broken since the dojo. He stopped in front of a massive door. A giant 1A was painted on it in bold red letters. He heard shouting from inside. Get your feet off the desk, you barbarian! Ha! You wanna fight, Four Eyes? Ida and Bakugo. Izuku felt a strange phantom ache in his chest. For years, his entire world had revolved around catching up to Bakugo, around being in the same league. Now, he was standing right there, separated by a few inches of wood. He stared at the door for a long moment. Then, he turned his head. Further down the hall, slightly less central, was another door. It was just as big, just as imposing, but the hallway seemed quieter here. 1B. Izuku exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. He walked past 1A. He didn't stop. He marched to the second door and pushed it open. The den of the underdogs. Class 1B was buzzing with the nervous energy of the first day. The students were finding their seats, eyeing each other, trying to gauge the competition. When Izuku stepped in, the chatter dipped noticeably. "That's him," a whisper cut through the air. "The guy who blew up the zero-pointer. He looks shorter than I expected. Look at his arms, though. Dude's built like a brick." Izuku kept his face neutral. Assessment mode. He scanned the room as he walked to his assigned desk near the back. Target 1, orange hair, side ponytail. Kendo Itsuka. Posture suggests martial arts training. Center of gravity is balanced. Target 2, metal-like skin around the eyelashes. Tetsu 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 Tetsu. Similar build to Kirishima from the exam. Brawler type. Target 3, vines for hair. Ibara Shiozaki. Long-range specialist. Keep distance. He sat down. The boy next to him turned. He had slick blonde hair and eyes that seemed to be dissecting Izuku with a mix of amusement and arrogance. "So," the blonde boy said, leaning back in his chair casually. "You're the top scorer." Midoriya Izuku. Izuku turned to face him. "I am. 105 points," the boy mused. "Beat the explosion guy from 1A by a landslide in rescue points. And yet, here you are. In Class B." The boy's smile widened. It wasn't friendly, but it wasn't hostile either. It was conspiratorial. "I'm Monoma Nito. It's a pleasure to meet someone who understands the value of a dramatic entrance." "Breaking your arm to save a damsel?" "Majestic. Stupid, but majestic." "It was necessary," Izuku said quietly. "Not dramatic." "Oh, everything is dramatic at UA," Monoma waved a hand. "But tell me, Mr. Top Scorer, why did they dump the exam winner in the B class? Is there a defect? A hidden flaw?" Before Izuku could answer, the classroom door slammed open. It didn't slide. It slammed. Vlad King marched into the room. He was wearing his hero costume, the blood-red armor, the tubes, the visor. He looked less like a teacher and more like a riot control officer entering a prison block. "Sit down!" His voice boomed, rattling the windows. The students who were standing scrambled to their seats. Monoma straightened up instantly. Vlad King stomped to the podium. He didn't put down a stack of papers. He didn't write his name on the chalkboard. He placed his heavy, gauntlet hands on the lectern and glared at them through his visor. "I am Sekijiro Kansas hero name, Vlad King. For the next 3 years I am your father, your commander, and your worst nightmare." Silence reigned. "You are in Class 1B, Vlad continued, his voice dropping to a gravelly growl. "Do you know what that means?" A hand went up. "Kendo. It means we're the backup hero course?" "It means," Vlad interrupted, "that the world expects you to be second best." He pointed a finger at the wall shared with Class 1A. "Next door is Class 1A. The main event. They have All Might teaching their foundational heroics. They have the students with the flashiest quirks. The media will love them. The cameras will follow them. They are the golden children." Izuku saw Tetsu Tetsu clench his fist. He saw a flicker of annoyance in Monoma's eyes. But Vlad grinned, a terrifying expression beneath the visor. "In the field, gold is soft. Iron is hard." He began to pace the front of the room. "While they are busy posing for photos, you will be in the mud. While they are relying on their natural talents, you will be forging skills. We are not the backup. We are the ambush predators. We are the ones who come out of the shadows when the heroes have failed." He stopped in front of Izuku's desk. "Midoriya." Izuku stood up sharply. "Sir, tell them," Vlad barked. "What is the first rule of my gym?" "Survival," Izuku said instantly. "Survival before glory? Impact before image." "Sit." Izuku sat. The class stared at him. "He knows the teacher? Get your gym uniforms on," Vlad ordered, jerking a thumb toward the door. "We're going to the grounds. We're doing a quirk assessment test. And if you think this is just P, you can pack your bags and go to general education right now." The grounds. The P grounds were vast, a sprawling expanse of dirt tracks and testing equipment. The February air was crisp. As Class 1B gathered, they noticed another group assembling about 50 meters away. It was Class 1A. They were being led by a man in a black jumpsuit who looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. "Aizawa," Vlad muttered, eyeing his colleague. "He's running them through solitary drills." Vlad turned to his class. Alright, listen up. The Ministry of Education mandates standard fitness tests. Grip strength, 50-meter dash, ball throw, etc. But we don't do things the standard way. He held up a tablet. In the field, you rarely fight alone. Class 1A creates solo stars. 1B creates squads. You will perform these tests, but you will be graded on how you utilize your peers. Utilize? A girl with pony horns, Sinatori pony, asked in broken Japanese. Support. Combo. Assist, Vlad clarified. However, to establish a baseline, the first round is solo. I need to see what raw material I'm working with. Test 1, 50-meter dash, Midoriya. Kamakiri. On the line, Izuku stepped up to the starting blocks. Next to him was a boy with a mantis-like appearance and blades protruding from his arms. I'm gonna slice that time record in half, Kamakiri hissed, grinning at Izuku. Don't cry when you eat my dust, 0-pointer. Izuku didn't respond. He got into the starting position. Most students did a standing start. Izuku dropped low. His fingers dug into the dirt. He coiled his legs like springs. It was the stance of a sprinter, yes, but also the stance of a linebacker preparing to blitz. I can't use one for all, Izuku thought. Not for a sprint. The risk of blowing out my legs is too high. I need pure torque. Go! Kamakiri was fast. His blades cut the wind, making him aerodynamic, but Izuku was explosive. Drive. 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 10 months of pushing that accursed weighted sled. 10 months of squats until his quads screamed. Izuku didn't run lightly. He pounded the earth. Each step was a violent assertion of force. He crossed the line. 5.9 seconds. The robot announced for Kamakiri. 5.5 seconds. For Izuku. Kamakiri stared. What the hell? You didn't even use a quirk. Izuku stood up, dusting off his knees. He wasn't winded. Efficient start mechanics, he muttered. Low drag. Vlad King nodded, making a note. Good base stats. Next, test 2, grip strength. Izuku took the dynamometer. He squeezed. 58 kilograms. It wasn't superhuman. Kendo got 65 kilograms thanks to her big fist quirk. Tetsu got 80 kilograms in his steel form. But then Izuku looked at the boy with the tail, Ojiro from 1A, who was testing nearby. Ojiro got 50 kilograms. I'm stronger than a mutation type, Izuku noted. Without OFA. Hey, Midoriya, Tetsu slapped him on the back. It felt like being hit with a shovel. Not bad for a fleshy guy. We gotta spar sometime. Man to man. Sure, Izuku nodded. But I'd recommend padding. Test 3, standing long jump. Izuku cleared the sandbox easily without a quirk, using pure plyometric power. While he waited for the others, his eyes drifted to Class 1A. He saw Uraraka floating over the sandbox. Infinity. Amazing. He saw Bakugo blasting himself across. Explosive force. He saw a tall boy with engines in his legs. Ida. Then he saw the teacher, Aizawa, wrap his scarf around a green-haired boy. Wait, no. Around a boy with a plain face. You have zero potential. Izuku heard Aizawa's voice carry on the wind. Go home. The 1A student looked crushed. Harsh, Monoma whispered, appearing at Izuku's elbow. Eraserhead. He has the highest expulsion rate in UA. He cuts people like weeds. Izuku watched. He's weeding out those who hesitate. Vlad-sensei builds us up. Aizawa-sensei breaks them down to see who reforms. An interesting analysis, Monoma noted. You watch them a lot. 1A. Know your enemy, Izuku said automatically. Monoma's eyes lit up. Exactly. Test 5, the ball throw. This was it. The main event. Kendo threw the ball 400 meters by enlarging her hand and using it like a catapult. Tetsu threw it heavily, relying on mass. Hananuki softened the ground to create a trampoline effect. Midoriya, Vlad called out. Izuku walked to the circle. He held the softball. It felt light. The class went silent. They knew about the 0-pointer. They expected something massive. Izuku stood in the circle. He looked at his right arm. I can't break the arm, he told himself. Recovery girl won't fix me again so soon. And I have school tomorrow. I can't be in a cast on day 2. He remembered the feeling of the punch. The overflow of power. Don't open the floodgates. Just a leak. A pressurized jet. He transferred the power of one for all. Not to his whole arm. Not to his fist. To the tip of his right index finger. He wound up. He initiated the throw with his hip and shoulder. Standard mechanics. As his arm came forward, he snapped his finger. Smash. Crack. The sound was like a pistol shot. A shockwave blasted dust away from the circle. The ball disappeared into the stratosphere. Izuku hissed, clutching his hand. His index finger was purple, swollen, and definitely broken. Pain. It was sharp, white-hot. But compared to the shattered arm from the exam? It was nothing. It was a paper cut. Beep. Vlad showed the screen to the class. 705.3 meters. The class gasped. He beat the telekinetic girl. With just a finger? Vlad looked at Izuku's throbbing finger. He didn't offer sympathy. He nodded. You minimized the damage, Vlad stated. You sacrificed a pawn to take the king. Better than losing the whole arm. I can still fight, Izuku said through gritted teeth, flexing his remaining 3 fingers. My grip is compromised, but I can still grapple with the left. Good, Vlad said. Go get some ice from the cooler. As Izuku walked away, clutching his finger, the class looked at him differently. They didn't see a golden boy with a gift. They saw someone who treated his own body like ammunition. It was terrifying. And for Class 1B, it was inspiring. The Phantom's proposal. During the break, while Izuku was icing his finger, Monoma approached him again. You're an odd one, Midoriya, Monoma said, sitting on the bench next to him. How so? You have a quirk that rivals All Might, Monoma said softly, his voice dropping so the others couldn't hear. But you use it like it's a last resort. You did the sprint, the jump, the grip test. All without it. Why? Izuku looked at the melting ice. Because power has a price. If I rely on it, I break. If I break, I'm useless. A glass cannon, Monoma mused. Immense power, 0 durability. I have durability, Izuku corrected, tapping his chest. Just not against my own quirk, Monoma smirked. I have a proposition for you, Midoriya. He leaned in. My quirk is copy. I can touch someone and use their quirk for 5 minutes. Izuku's eyes widened. That's incredibly versatile. Depending on the stock limit and the combination potential, you could be a one-man army. Precisely. Monoma preened. Finally, someone with a brain. But here's the thing. I can't copy raw power accumulation easily. If I copy your quirk, I get the stockpile nature, but since I haven't stockpiled anything, it's likely a dud. Or if I do access the power, I blow my own arm off. Likely the latter, Izuku noted dryly. Exactly. So, I can't be the heavy hitter. But you are a heavy hitter who can't hit often. Monoma gestured to the class. We are going to be at war with 1A, Midoriya. The school pits the classes against each other. They have the flashy heroes. We have the technicians. Monoma placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. You are our phantom. Phantom? The ghost in the machine, Monoma explained. They will underestimate you because you're in Class B. They will think you're a one-trick pony who breaks his bones. But with my strategy and your power, we can crush them. Monoma's eyes burned with a chaotic intensity. I need a weapon, Midoriya. And you need a handler. Someone to cover you while you recharge. Someone to distract the enemy so you can land that one decisive blow. Izuku looked at Monoma. He saw the insecurity masked by arrogance. Monoma was terrified of being a side character. Izuku understood that fear. He had lived it for a decade. I'm not a weapon, Izuku said firmly. Monoma's smile faltered. But Izuku added, I am a teammate. If you have a plan to beat 1A. I'm listening. Monoma's grin returned, sharper than before. Oh, Midoriya. We are going to be best friends. The Crimson Tutelage, evening session. School was over. Most students had gone home or to the dorms, if they were open yet, but in this timeline, still commuting. Izuku stayed behind. He sat in the support development studio, a chaotic workshop filled with tools and half-finished gadgets. Vlad King was there, along with a short, frantic man wearing a welding mask. Power loader. This is the boy? Power Loader asked, looking Izuku over. The one who shatters like glass? That's him, Vlad grunted. Show him the prototype. Power Loader rummaged through a bin and pulled out a sleek, dark red gauntlet. It wasn't bulky like a robot arm. It was a compression sleeve made of a dense, woven metallic fabric, with rigid plating running along the ulna and radius bones. The Crimson Guard, Mark I, Power Loader announced. Put it on, Vlad ordered. Izuku slid his right arm into the sleeve. It was tight, incredibly tight. He felt the fabric squeezing his muscles, locking them in place. It's a high-grade compression weave, Vlad explained. It won't stop your bones from breaking if you use 100%. Nothing will stop that. But this will apply external pressure to keep the muscle fibers from tearing apart under the strain of lower percentages. And if you do break the bone, the rigid plating acts as an instant splint. Izuku flexed his hand. The broken finger was splinted separately. The gauntlet felt secure. It felt like armor. Why? Izuku asked, looking up at Vlad. Freshmen usually don't get support gear requests approved this fast. I pushed it through, Vlad said simply. I told the principal that if he wants his top scorer to survive the semester, he needs equipment. Vlad leaned against the workbench. You have a bad habit, Midoriya. You hesitate to use your power because you fear the pain. That hesitation will get you killed faster than a broken arm. He tapped the metal plating on Izuku's arm. This is your safety net. It allows you to fire the gun without worrying about the recoil as much. I want you to start practicing with 5%. Just 5%. All Might tells me that's your current safe limit if you spread it out. 5%. Izuku murmured. He tried to summon the feeling. The hum. He spread it through the gauntlet. The green lightning flickered, contained by the red fabric. It feels contained, Izuku said. Good. Now about your costume. Vlad pulled up a holographic design. Izuku had submitted a sketch, a green jumpsuit that looked suspiciously like a bunny rabbit, meant to honor All Might's hair tufts. This, Vlad pointed at the bunny ears, is ridiculous. Izuku blushed. It was a first draft. We're changing it, Vlad said. We're keeping the green fine. It suits your hair. But we're adding armor plating. Shin guards. Steel-toed boots. And a utility belt for medical supplies. Vlad looked Izuku in the eye. You are a combat medic who is also the heavy artillery. Your costume needs to reflect that. Scaring the villain is just as important as saving the civilian. When you walk into a room, I want them to think a tank just rolled in. Izuku looked at the revised design. It was tactical. It was rugged. The mouthpiece looked like a respirator. The cowl was less bunny and more horned demon. It looked like the apprentice of the blood hero. I like it, Izuku said. The walk home. Izuku left the school gates as the sun was setting. He wore the gauntlet under his jacket. Vlad had told him to wear it 24/7 to get used to the compression. Deku. The voice came from the shadows of the gate. Izuku stopped. He didn't flinch. He turned his head slowly. Bakugo stood there, hands in his pockets, slouching. He looked furious, but also confused. Katsuki, Izuku acknowledged. Don't call me that, Bakugo spat. What the hell was that today? 700 meters? With a finger? It's my quirk, Izuku said calmly. You lied to me. Bakugo stepped forward, smoke curling from his palms. For 10 years. You played the victim. You looked down on me, pretending to be weak while you hid this power. I didn't have it, Izuku said. He turned his body fully to face Bakugo. He didn't raise his hands, but he shifted his weight to his back foot. Defensive stance. Ready to grapple. I was quirkless. Until recently. Bullshit! Bakugo yelled. You can't just get a quirk. Believe what you want, Izuku said. But I'm not hiding anymore. And I'm not chasing you anymore. Bakugo froze. Ha! I used to run after you, Izuku said, looking at the setting sun. I wanted to be like you. Strong. Confident. The winner. He looked back at Bakugo. His eyes were cold, green steel. But I realized something, Katsuki. You win because you're talented. I win because I refuse to die. Izuku tapped the side of his leg. I'm in Class 1B. We're the extras. The background characters. And that's fine. Because while you're busy being the protagonist, I'm going to be the one who ends the fight. He turned and walked away. Don't you walk away from me! Bakugo screamed, explosions popping in his hands. He made to charge. Whoosh! Something wrapped around Bakugo's chest. A scarf. That's enough. Aizawa stood there, his eyes glowing red, hair floating. He had been watching from the gate. Use your quirks on school grounds without authorization again, Bakugo, and I'll expel you before the first day is over. Bakugo struggled, then went limp, scowling. TCH. Aizawa released him. He watched Izuku walking away down the street. Vlad's kid, Aizawa thought. He provoked Bakugo, but he didn't initiate. He managed the distance perfectly. Interesting. The Phantom Awakens. That night, Izuku sat at his desk. He wasn't writing about All Might. He was writing in a new notebook, Class 1B, Squad Tactics. Monoma, copy. Highly dependent on teammates. Needs close range. Strategy. Use myself as bait to draw enemies in. Let Monoma copy my strength for a finishing double team. Kendo, big fist. Mid-range crowd control. Can act as a shield. Shiozaki, vines. Capture and restraint. Ideal for setting up targets. Izuku looked at his gauntlet hand. He flexed the fingers. The metal plates hummed. He wasn't the lonely quirkless boy anymore. He wasn't the symbol of peace's carbon copy. He was the Phantom of Class 1B. And tomorrow, the war would begin.